In the first Nintendo Direct of the year, Nintendo surprised us by announcing a remake of Metroid Prime, which was originally released on the GameCube back on November 18th, 2002. Okay, so we weren't so much surprised as this remake and/or the Prime trilogy itself was very strongly hinted at by industry insiders for some time now. What was a surprise was Nintendo shadow dropping the digital version that same day while also announcing a physical release available for 2 weeks later. I'm going to do this review a little bit differently, as I'm going to score it first. My hope is to either sell you on buying this game, or if you've already bought it, make you feel better about your purchase. Yes, I'm a huge Metroid fan, but I didn't always love this specific entry. When it first came out, I played it for a couple hours and honestly couldn't get into it. Then in 2004, I dove headfirst right back in and never looked back. And that was the GameCube version. This remaster is an improvement in every way from the original, and even more so from the Wii's Prime trilogy. This is easily a 10 out of 10 game. When Metroid Prime originally released, Nintendo billed it as a first-person adventure rather than be called a first-person shooter. I'm guessing Nintendo didn't want to have this confused with other FPSs such as Doom or Halo, when the main gameplay loop for Metroid Prime doesn't fit how those type of entries work. 90% of gameplay is in the first person, and in the 20 years since Metroid Prime's release, other games have released that are actually similar to this first-person type exploration. This includes games like Skyrim for the first-person exploration, though that entry leans much more heavily on RPG dynamics. The BioShock series, these are a lot more story-intensive, or even Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. These last two entries are outstanding, and while the Doomslayer himself traverses and completes individual levels, there are still many Metroidvania elements to them. And heck, even Batman Arkham Asylum could count, though that isn't a first-person shooter since it's third-party. These are some of the more prominent examples, and of course there are even more. Even with all of these, there's still a lot that's so unique to Metroid Prime specifically that's only seen in certain parts of each of those types of games. For one thing, Samus is completely alone in her quest, surrounded only by ferocious animal and plant-based beasts and dangerous humanoid beings called space pirates. For a Metroid game though, Prime starts out quite formulaic, especially when comparing it to the SNES entry in the series, Super Metroid. Receiving a distress signal, Samus explores a ship in space, fights a boss, makes a harrowing escape, and pursues her mortal nemesis to a much larger planet where the rest of the game takes place. I would argue that this entry does a much better job having this first area be a tutorial of sorts, introducing the player on how to control Samus. And boy does Samus control like a dream. The GameCube version had controls as shown on the screen, and one thing to note about this is that there's no way for Samus to both look around and move at the same time in this GameCube entry. To look, the player must hold the R button down and use the main joystick to do so. Not only does the remaster offer this controller scheme for purists of the original, it offers a dual-stick control scheme, one that, funny enough, Halo had pioneered. Of course, we're over 20 years since the release of Halo, but going back to Prime with it feels fantastic. For Prime Trilogy on the Wii fans, the remaster offers a control scheme akin to this way of playing. There's also an option that's an amalgamation of both controller and motion, meaning, total, there's 4 ways Remastered gives you to control Samus. Myself being a boomer gamer who loved both Prime and Halo, I definitely preferred the dual stick method. The buttery smooth controls, no matter what you pick, allow Samus to explore the world of Talon 4 with ease. As the name Metroid suggests, the gameplay loop is that of a Metroidvania. Samus is limited to where she can explore based on what abilities she has on her suit, at least until she finds them during exploration. If she does, the world and its many environments open up to her, including platforming and puzzle challenges, as well as tough enemies and ingenious bosses. One of my favorite was fighting the Frost Stone enemy, Thardus. Now, I hated fighting him in the Wii Prime Trilogy version simply because holding the Wiimote and aiming for its various weak points as they changed during the battle killed my wrist. Now that I've got the dual stick controls, Thardus was a blast to fight. I've noticed load times in general too have improved quite a fair bit. This includes when Samus rides elevators between areas and the time it takes for doors to open. The latter, of course, being another way to mask load times between rooms. Gameplay elements from the original that worked great too, such as the different visors, look fantastic. And that includes the thermal and x-ray visors. And I always laugh reading banal stuff like Space Pirate HR notices using the scan visors as they appear. I wonder if Ridley has a greater mortal enemy than Samus through his HR department, like Michael Scott had with Toby from The Office. When Metroid Prime released back in 2002, it surprised everyone just how excellent it looked upon release. If you look back at that GameCube entry even today, it still looks pretty good. Games from this generation of consoles really have aged quite gracefully, at least better than its previous generation on the Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, and the like. Now, today though, Prime Remastered can't compare to how games like Dead Space and Elden Ring look on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, but that's not really the point. Nintendo hasn't been about being the best for graphics and performance since the GameCube. The Switch itself is built on the NVIDIA Tegra chipset that, while the Switch was released in 2017, said chipset dates back to 2015. This means it's got half to a quarter of the specs to last gen's PS4 and Xbox One. And with this said, it is absolutely crazy just how fantastic the remaster of Prime looks on the Switch. To me, the big holy crap moments are when Samus first lands on Talon 4, or first exploring the open area of Phendrana Drifts, and how they look so much better than its original GameCube counterpart. It's been said that Retro Studios isn't emulating this original version. Instead, they used the Prime gameplay engine itself to run the game, making improvements on nearly every facet of the game from there. All of this while ensuring the game runs at 60 frames per second. And during the entirety of my gameplay, I never saw a frame rate slowdown. Before playing Metroid Prime Remastered, I would have said the best looking Switch games were either Luigi's Mansion 3 or Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, there's no way I can't say Metroid Prime Remastered isn't the best looking game, because it is. Small touches from the original, like when shooting missiles, it showing Samus's face being reflected back, look absolutely fantastic. One thing I've noticed is that the game uses the same exact soundtrack that was in the original GameCube release. This means that the music is probably the only thing that I couldn't tell has been changed or upgraded at all. I've listened to the soundtrack an innumerable amount of times since the original game has come out 20 years ago, so I would hope that I could tell the difference, though I'm sure it's been upscaled to match the Switch hardware. Maybe I was expecting a remix or a reorchestration of the music or something, but this isn't really a letdown to me per se, because the original soundtrack is so fantastic. It was composed by Kenji Yamamoto, who also did music for the rest of the series except, of course, Other M, and I believe the original Metroid on the NES. Yamamoto's also been known for scoring other games such as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, several tracks from Smash Bros. Brawl, and a couple of the Rhythm Heaven games. The music from Metroid Prime provides melodic and ambient support for cold, bracing environments like Phendrana Drifts, as well as remixes of existing works to help pair the scalding hot Magmore Caverns. While Talon 4's theme does end up following Samus whenever the player completes Prime 1 through 3, and is thus like a main theme for her in the Prime series, I feel none is so iconic to Metroid Prime than the theme that plays both in the file select and in the credits. One thing that YouTube content creator Dreamcastguy pointed out was how quiet Samus herself is. Games released nowadays often have the character the player controls talk to themselves, adding additional monologue and general noise to the game. Besides grunts when landing or yelps of pain when taking damage, Samus is completely silent. And this is done by design, adding to the feeling of isolation that the player has throughout the course of the game. But it's also done as a credit to Samus's overall character. She may be completely alone, But she doesn't need to talk herself up or comment on anything at all, despite how scary or even gruesome enemies or environments are. She's a seasoned bounty hunter, and this is not her first rodeo. Missile explosions, enemies being defeated, beams blasting, everything sounds great here. There's a perfect amount of weight to all of these as Samus continues her journey in pursuit of her nemesis and explores these wide, varied environments. So anyway, in my brief summary here, hopefully I've convinced you to give this game a chance or feel better about your purchase. Personally, for me, as a Metroid series fan, the more people who play this series and enjoy it, the better. And while the brand new entry of Metroid Dread, a 2D style Metroidvania released in October 2021, was at $60, Metroid Prime Remastered released at $40. I will offer a warning though, this game is a product of its time. Yes, gameplay has been optimized for the best controls, smoothest performance, and even includes a new casual, easier difficulty level, but there is no checkpoint system at all in the game. If you pick it up, make sure you save and save often, because if you die, you will go back to the last place you saved, and if you haven't done so in a while, you're going to lose all the work you might have gone through up to that point. With how well both Retro Studios and Iron Galaxy Studios did to remaster Metroid Prime 1 for a system like the Switch, I'm now encouraged with what they could do with Metroid Prime 4. If that entry comes out for the Switch, I'm thinking we'll be in really great shape. Though with how good it looks here, imagine how Metroid Prime 4 would be on a stronger next-gen Nintendo system. I'd also love to get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered, but at this point I'm just really happy to have received Metroid Prime 1 in this form. Have I convinced you at all to try this game? Do you have any reservations at all? Let me know in the comments section below. While I totally understand that not every game is for everyone, Metroid Prime Remastered is a masterclass in gameplay and is the bar we should hold companies to whenever they remaster or remake their games. I loved my time with this game, and it was a great reminder of why I love the Metroid series and video games overall. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.